Mr. Tavaglione, would you please begin your opening statement?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Good morning, Riverside, and thank you, the Chamber, for your prominence and business advocacy on behalf of this region. You're known throughout not only the region for your advocacy, but also the state. Thank you, members, for that. I think it's fair to say, ladies and gentlemen, that our country is extremely challenged. There are too many leaders in Washington, as you all know, that are not getting things done. They're failing us, and we must begin the process of turning our nation around. I don't need to tell any of you how challenged our regional economy is. For the last 6 years, there's been an economic downturn, and while we're seeing some improvement, we still have a long way to go. Currently, we're at 11.5% unemployment rate, one of the highest in the nation, and that has to change. But it's not going to change without partisan partnerships. The ability to bring our nation together through working together through bipartisanship. It's unfortunate today that we have so much polarization, but that's the way it is, and it needs to change. And that is something I intend to do and work very hard towards when I become a member of Congress. I spent 18 years on the Riverside County Board of Supervisors, chairman this year, been through the difficult times and very good times. These more recent times, we've had to make some very, very difficult decisions. And those decisions are going to be made in Washington once I'm elected to the U.S. Congress. I'm going to fight on your behalf. I feel very fortunate to have this opportunity as a born and raised resident of this community. And I promise you that I will serve and serve with moderation for the benefit of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, the candidates will answer questions composed by the Chamber. During the session, we will alternate between each of the candidates to answer the question that was asked. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to complete his statement. Each candidate will be given a yellow signal in front of the stage when the candidate has 30 seconds remaining, and when the candidate's time is up, a red signal, which is being shown now, will be given. We will begin with Mr. McConnell for the first question. And the question is, this past July, Congress passed and President Obama signed into law a new transportation bill called Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century, which reauthorized federal highway construction programs for 2 years. The question is, for the passage of this bill, what are your plans to further address the transportation infrastructure and goods movement needs within inland Southern California?
Well, I'm very pleased that the Congress came together finally to pass the transportation bill. I'm disappointed that it was only authorized for 2 years. Really, for planning purposes, the bill should have been authorized for up to 5 to 6 years. I've been speaking to many civil engineers in the district who are very worried about our water infrastructure, our infrastructure period, and making sure we build out our underpasses to make our intersections more efficient, make sure the flow of goods occurs. My understanding is that this bill was passed on a bipartisan basis in the Senate. It was with nearly 71%, 71 votes. It was authored by Senator Boxer. It was held up in the House. There's a lot of partisan games played with it. We need to go to Washington. I will go to Washington to be represented to make sure that on the House side, we work with the Senate to get the transportation bill that's authorized for a full 5 years to allow for the kind of planning and build out of these projects that we need. It's awfully hard to do it on a 2-year, there's a lot of uncertainty that's created by a 2-year authorization. We have tremendous transportation needs, and I'm committed to fighting for our fair share of transportation and infrastructure dollars.
Thank you. The same question to you, Mr. Tavaglione.
Thank you, Jack. 2 years is just not enough time for a transportation bill, ladies and gentlemen. It takes literally years to develop a concept through completion, major transportation infrastructure. You just cannot do it within 2 years. You cannot plan for the future. You cannot put the process in motion to even secure your money. Even when you have a Measure A, like Riverside County does, South County, to have that sales tax. You need much longer time period in order to do that. I'll give you one example. It took me 15 years to build one interchange on the 15 freeway, Galena and Cantu Valley Island interchange. That was through a process of federal funding, state and local funding, and it was a process that was held up because of the bureaucracy in Washington, which needs to be fixed. The 2-year process, or the 2-year bill that was just passed, why was it only 2 years? Because they're kicking the can down the road once again, not being able to work together on common ground to get things done on behalf of all of us. That's plain and simple problem in Washington.
Thank you for that response. Mr. Tavaglione, will return to you for the next question. And the question is this: have you seen any challenges surface with the passage of the No Child Left Behind Act in 2001? And what ideas would you bring to improve college and workforce preparedness for our students?
Well, I'm not an expert on education. I'll be the first to admit that. But in watching our federal government try to govern local education, they failed miserably. In my view, the federal government should stay out of what we do on the local level for education. Sure, give us the money, hand it down to the state, but let us do what we know how to do best. Our teachers know how to do best, and that's educate our kids with fewer strings attached. I've heard from educators that the over-testing is just mind-boggling and is taking time away from those kids and the teachers to really educate them. We're number 50 out of 50 states. That's embarrassing and that's wrong. No, it's not because of the educators, it's because of the process. And so we have to make it more local control to allow our kids, my grandchildren, to become educated in a much better fashion, and also soon gain speed upon other states in this nation. Let's remember, we're the 8th largest economy in the world. We ought to be at the top of the education spectrum.
Thank you for that response. Mr. Tacano, would you please respond to the same question?
Well, thank you. I have 23 years as a frontline classroom teacher. I've been in the classroom. For 22 years, I've been a community college trustee. I'm going to bring that combined experience and be a voice for education, a reasonable voice for education in Washington. There are very few people who have actually been teachers who are serving in Congress. The high-stakes testing and the regulations that come out of Washington have been bad for teaching and learning in the classroom. And like many of you who complain about the regulations out of Washington that do not have any consideration for the end user, this has happened in education. Yes, we do need to bring back local control. I do believe in teacher accountability, but simplistic pencil and paper tests are not the answer. We have an alternative approach here at Riverside. Riverside Community College formed a partnership with Corona Northwest School District, and we produced John F. Kennedy High School, Middle School. Those students are able to graduate with a high school diploma and an AA degree. We can compress 6 years into 4. This is an alternative method, an alternative way to prepare our students for college. Completion counts is another example of how we're working with Riverside Unified and Elbert Unified School Districts to prepare students for college. No Child Left Behind actually took our eye off the ball for college preparedness because we were too busy making the students pass these tests instead of preparing them for higher education.
Thank you for that response. And Mr. Connell, we will return to you for the third question. The third question is this: March Air Reserve Base contributes more than $500 million in economic activity to the region. Do you think the location of military installations in our community is a benefit? And if so, what actions would you take to ensure that this and other military installations stay here?
March Air Force Base, Air Reserve Base is a critical element of our economy. I will do everything that I can as your representative to make sure that our national defense needs are served, that we make the argument, make the case that our national defense is served by this facility. We had many of our troops that were involved in Iraq and Afghanistan were transported through that facility. I know that we have our remote weapon system with the drones that are also a part of that facility. We need to make sure that I will work with other members of the delegation, my leadership, the administration, to make sure that we do everything we can to keep March in place.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Takano. And Mr. Tavaglione, the same question to you.
Thank you, Jack. Well, I grew up with March Air Force Base when it was an active duty base. B-52s flying over our home, belching black smoke. And I miss those days, quite frankly. Black smoke. I miss the B-52s. But March Air Force Base, back in the day, before it suffered from RAC 1, was the economic infrastructure of the region before Riverside downtown and the county began to grow. And then when RAC 1 came about in RAC 2 in 1993, we had severe concerns about how they were going to keep March Air Force Base open. I was on the city council at the time. There was Mayor Loveridge and others at that time who worked, and Marina Valley, to work to ensure that March Air Force Base remained in some fashion. We're there. We're still there. We have the 452nd Air Mobility Wing, the 4th Air Force, and of course, we hope to soon get the C-46 cargo planes to March Air Force Base to replace the planes that are currently there. I will fight on our regional behalf to ensure that it stays open.
Thank you for that response. Now, please answer Mr. Tavaglione the next question that's still with you. This is our fourth question. Washington, D.C. has been characterized by intense partisanship. How would you bridge the gap between the two parties on the nation's critical issues?
Great question. Thank you. I think that's our biggest problem in Washington, D.C. Obviously, it's held back their polarization in Washington between the parties, even between members of their own parties, and different spectrums that held back the progress within our country, our employment, our economic growth. What needs to be happening is people need to remember, most importantly, who puts them in office. When you're voted into office, that doesn't mean that you have been supported strictly by one party or the other. That means that you are going to be supported by a number of different parties and a number of different factions within the community. In the end, you represent all the people. And I intend to go to U.S. Congress with an open arm to meet as many congressional members on both sides of the aisle and do what's right on behalf of our nation, especially our region. As I said, 18 years on the Board of Supervisors. One of my traits and one thing I'm known for is compromise. Bringing people together towards common ground. I enjoy doing that. It's the only way to get things done. We do it in our marriages. We do it in our businesses. We do it in our businesses, and we do it in local government, and we need to do it in federal government level as well.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Tavaglione. Mr. Serrano, the same question to you, sir.
Well, let me state that my family members, my brothers, my father, I'm the only Democrat in my family, and we still get along. I've been on a local government, the Board of Trustees, and we've had a mixed board of Democrats and Republicans, and the local government experience has given me quite a bit of background and how to forge solutions that are practical and pragmatic and not about partisanship. And most of the time we agree. And when we disagree, we learn how to do it in a way that's not, we don't become disagreeable people. The transportation bill is a point in case about the partisanship. There was bipartisan agreement in the Senate. It's the House where hyper-partisanship, and I will say, I'll never say it's there's an extreme Republican leadership in that caucus, which did almost doom the ability to pass the transportation bill. It's the reason why it's only a 2-year authorization instead of a 5-year authorization. When I was elected first to the Board of Trustees 20 years ago, it was Dominic Tavaglione that came into my mother's insurance office and asked her to be her life insurance agent, his life insurance agent. The connection between our two families is amazing. We live in many ways in a small town. I want to bring that experience of working together to Washington, D.C.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Takano, and it's going to be back to you for the next question. The fifth question is this. What would you do to improve or streamline the federal environmental review process for new construction and development in California? Yes, you have the question.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm very proud that Riverside County approved a multi-species habitat conservation plan, which lays out for the future where we're going to develop and what land we need to set aside for endangered species habitat. We can avoid conflict in the future, making sure this plan is fully funded. And amazingly, there is actually a line item in the budget, oil leases offshore, proceeds or royalties from that, we get a share of that go into a special government fund. But we need to authorize that money to help buy the set-aside land in the future as we take down land for development in the future. State resources aren't there, and local resources aren't there. We need to look toward federal resources as well. Fortunately, I will be a member of a caucus that believes in this purpose. We have an ideological opposition on the other side, which doesn't believe in using federal money for this purpose. We need to make sure for our future economic development that people know exactly where they can develop, and we have a plan for mitigating for endangered species. We've been laying the groundwork. I congratulate the Board of Supervisors for doing that. But the job of a federal representative is to make sure that we get the resources to buy the set-aside property.
Thank you for that response. Now, Mr. Tavaglione, you have the same question.
Thank you. First and foremost, if I were supreme ruler, I'd get rid of all the agencies, federal agencies that deal with the process. And I know that's not reasonable. But I can tell you, in working with all of them over the last 18 years, and in the short time I was on the Riverside City Council, whether it be the Environmental Protection Agency, the Fish and Wildlife Agency, Corps of Engineers, Federal Transportation Agencies, they do not communicate, and they have duplication among all the agencies that literally takes years to get through the process. What needs to be done? Yes, we need to be very, very sensitive to the environment. That's why the Board of Supervisors, as Mark indicated, put forth one of the largest habitat conservation agencies in the nation. It took us 7 years to do that. Today, still though, even though we have our permit, the process of getting projects completed is broken because the agencies do not communicate. They're too bloated, they duplicate in areas of review, and they take years to get a project approved. There needs to be a top-down review of every one of the agencies. And most importantly, we need to ensure that CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, takes precedence over NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act, because their march is much better. You can shorten that period by at least 2 years.
Thank you. And Mr. Tavaglione, you have the next question first. The sixth question is this. If elected, what would be your first policy priorities in office?
Well, I have put together a number already of advisory committees, positions, others to help advise me, not just now during the process of the campaign, but once I'm elected, when I go to Congress, I intend to utilize the expertise of those various experts. Most importantly to us today, ladies and gentlemen, is our economy. I'm structuring now an economic and business roundtable that will stay with me once I'm elected to Congress, and that will be the first area that I will focus on. Of course, I'll need to get used to where my office is and how to get around one of the buildings there. But the most important thing is to bring people together and start working towards relationships so that when we do get to the very difficult decisions, I know who to go to on
Thank you for that response, Mr. Tavaglione. Mr. Connell, the same question to you, sir.
Well, my top priority, day one, when I assume office, will be to focus like a laser beam on jobs, 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 and how to create more jobs in our community. I will work with whoever's president, and I of course hope it's President Obama, on passing a jobs bill. You know, there's been gridlock in Washington, and there's plenty of things we could have been doing. For instance, the 5-year authorization of the transportation bill. The transportation bill is jobs. The fact that it's only 2 years instead of 5 is a huge problem. Infrastructure is one of the ways we can put a lot of construction workers back to work right away. We can put through a tax cut for the middle class, a tax cut for small businesses. That's going to free up a lot of consumer money to get our economy going here locally. We could also work to bring you more access to capital. There's plenty of options on the table that we should consider. I like the one by Senator Schumer, which would syndicate local lenders to provide a second look to those business plans that have been going wanting. I know that you don't really want to work with venture capitalists to give up control of your business. You'd rather go out and get the loan. With interest rates as low as they are in history, we should be able to find ways for businesses to have access to capital.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Connell. And now, Mr. Connell, would you please answer the following question? This is the seventh question. In your opinion, what can the federal government do, if anything, to revive passenger traffic at Ontario International Airport?
Well, I do believe that we need to gain regional and local control of that facility away from Los Angeles people that now control it. I understand it has a lot to do with getting airlines to commit to routes here, and so we need to actually work with those airlines. We have gate fees that are out of our control, which we need to get control of. And I will pledge to work with our local delegation here in the Inland Empire to build on relationships that I've built over the years with some of the Los Angeles area folks, and begin to build a plan to take regional control of that facility.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Connell. Mr. Tavaglione, the same question to you, sir.
Well, thank you. I think the only way to get Ontario back on its feet is to gain control of Ontario International Airport. We need to take it away from the LA airport system. They, as you well know, the reason the fees are so high is because they don't want Ontario competing with Los Angeles International Airport. And that's why it costs you more, it costs me more, it costs others more to fly out of Ontario versus Orange County or even LA. So the airlines are not going to frequent, they're not going to fly out of Ontario until there's control given to the locals. Ontario is trying, as is San Diego County. We at Riverside County have offered to be a partner in that regard. We think we know how to turn that around. We run a number of airports within our county and own airports within our own county. We think we know how to do what's right to gain control of Ontario, but it's going to take, in my view, probably the pressure from the federal government. And I intend to join my colleagues, Ken Calvert, and whoever replaces our great colleague, Jerry Lewis, to do that. And hopefully, we have no choice. We have to get Ontario under control of local jurisdictions.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Tavaglione. And now we'll keep with you for the final question to begin with. Our eighth and final question is this. In the recent economic downturn, inland Southern California has been plagued with a serious foreclosure problem. The question is, what are your priorities to bring stability and growth to the housing market?
Well, first and foremost, get the federal government out of the way. No more bank bailouts. Allow the market to move. Free market, as we know, it does best. but stay out of their way. Do I think there should be any other incentives to banks should there be TARP, other than the TARP and NSA funds that we had to help bail out the mortgage foreclosure crisis? No, I do not think so. I think the best way to do it is to get jobs generated here in the region, jobs that are going to put people back to work, give them the opportunity to afford homes, because there are great deals out there, as you well know. Give them the opportunity to afford homes, and then go out and let it work on a natural basis. We should stay out of it, in my opinion. Let the market work as the free market should.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Tavaglione. And now, Mr. Tocano, your question.
Well, jobs should be our number one priority, and jobs will allow people to get their mortgages current and stay in their homes. But I want to point out that Governor Romney and President Obama agreed on an approach to allow homeowners who hold mortgages with Fannie and Freddie Mac, those homeowners that don't have a lot of equity in their homes, to refinance at a lower interest rate. And again, I would point out that we have some of the lowest interest rates in history. What's holding it up is bureaucratic and partisan bickering. We have the two major presidential candidates from both parties coming to an agreement on something. You can bet that I'm going to go to Washington to make sure that we find ways to allow those homeowners that qualify under this policy agreement between the two candidates to benefit from refinancing opportunities.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Tocano. This completes the question and answer segment. We will now have our candidates give a 2-minute closing statement. As with our opening statements, each candidate will be given a yellow signal in front of the stage when 30 seconds remain, and a red signal when the candidate's time is up. We will go in reverse order of the opening statements. Therefore, we'll begin with Mr. Tavaglione.
Thank you. Again, thank you all for allowing us to be here today. Ladies and gentlemen, as you well know, our country is at a crossroads. We must put our country back on track. If we don't, our future generations are at risk. When you look at electing your next congressman, this new congressman for the 41st Congressional District, you need to look at strong and proven leadership in the region, not just here in the city, but in the entire region and state. We need a representative with the experience of dealing with a multitude of complicated issues affecting our country's prosperity. I have that experience. What we do is deliver the services brought down by the federal government. The representative needs to know how to get our economy turned around. Drive anywhere within my district. My supervisorial district that I represented for the past 18 years. You will see how to get things done. And that's exactly what I intend to do when I go to U.S. Congress. I face the bureaucratic red tape. It's horrible. It's embarrassing. It's uncalled for. And our country can move along if we get rid of that. But most important, whether we talk about jobs, whether we talk about health care, whether we talk about March Air Force Base, Ontario is going to take all members of Congress rolling up their sleeves, working towards a level of sanity in a collegial way to get things done through compromise